Hello, this video is to go with homework 7.3a and notes 7.3a. So let's get right to it. We're now looking at three-dimensional figures. So imagine we have this, this box here, which is called a rectangular prism. And we want to just imagine you're a bug and you need to crawl from point A to point B. So if you're an ant, then to go from point A to point B, we would have to follow a path that goes along this line, line N, and then up this edge to point B. If we were to do that, that means that we have to walk along this diagonal. Now we can figure out how long that line is using the Pythagorean theorem as long as we know this side and this side. But now imagine that instead of an insect that crawls, we can now fly. So we're now a bee. So if I'm a bee, I can start from point A and fly through the air inside the box and just go directly to B. So in that case, I'm skipping this part and this part. I don't need to do those now. Well, in this lesson, we're going to learn how to find the length of line N. And then in 7.3b, we'll learn how to find line M. In the meantime, let's just worry about line N. So on your notes, you see these two figures. The one here on the top has two diagonals written. We have this blue one and this gold-colored one. Well, in this case, I can find the length of one diagonal using the Pythagorean theorem. And I only need to find one because the two diagonals are congruent to each other. So if the problem says to find the length of the diagonals, I only have to find one of them. However, we can also have shapes like the one on the right. The one on the right is a parallelogram, and we would need to find the length of this line and the length of this one. And those two have different lengths because it is a parallelogram. So in this case, we'd have to find the length of both of them. So let's find the length of the diagonal C on this rectangle. Now remember, since it's a rectangle, I do not need to worry about finding the length of this diagonal because it's going to be exactly the same as the one that's already marked. So I only need to do one of them. So we'll start out by writing an equation based on the Pythagorean theorem. So we will do 10 squared plus 18 squared equals c squared. I can expand that out. 10 squared is 100, 18 squared is 324. Add those together and I get 424. If I square root 424, I get approximately 20.6. Now let's see if that makes sense. Could the length of this diagonal be 20.6? Well, sure, because if this is 18, I can see that the diagonal is a little bit longer than 18. So that is a reasonable answer. Next, let's try a parallelogram. So this shape is a parallelogram, and we want to find the length of the diagonals. But please note that the length of M right here is not the same as the length of N right here. N is in fact a little bit longer, so we have to find both of them. Well, let's start out with finding line M. On line M, I'm going to trace out the right triangle that we'll use to find the length of the diagonal called M. So we're going to find the length of this diagonal, and we're going to do that by constructing a right triangle. So I'm going to drop a vertical line right here, and then put a horizontal line here. So now I have a right triangle that is purple, and I need to set up a Pythagorean theorem. Well, I know that the length of this side right here, if I look at the diagram, I see that it's 6 meters. The length of this side, I can see, is 8 meters. And of course, the unknown is M. So I can set up my Pythagorean relationship by saying 6 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared, or m squared if you prefer. Well, 6 squared is 36, 8 squared is 64. If I add 36 plus 64, I get 100. If I square root both sides, then I get 10. So if I look over, get rid of the ink, if I go back to my original triangle, which was there, there, and there, would it make sense that my hypotenuse could be 10? Well, yes, that is a sensible answer if the bottom of the triangle is 8. Okay, so now let's look at the other diagonal. The other diagonal is n, as shown on the diagram. So we need to construct another right triangle, and we can do that by continuing this triangle up, and then from there to the right. So now I have a right triangle marked in green, and I know its side lengths. This long side at the top is marked as 11 meters. The side length on the left side is marked over here as 6 meters. And then, of course, my hypotenuse, I don't know, it is n, but we'll call it c in a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So for my Pythagorean relationship, I will put 6 squared plus 11 squared equals c squared. 6 squared is 36, 11 squared is 121, and when I add those two together, I get 157. So c squared is 157. If I square root both sides of that, I get approximately 12 and a half. So ask yourself, does that make sense? Could this length of line n be 12.5? Well, sure it could. If this is 11, then the hypotenuse could be 12 and a half. So now we have two diagonals. We have M and N. So let's look at the homework. There are only two problems on the homework. And you were supposed to find the length of all diagonals. So in this first problem, let's mark the diagonals. I have one that goes from S up to Q, and then I have another one that goes from P down to R. Now I'm going to complete the right triangles that I can use in my Pythagorean relationship. So I can go from S up to P, and then from P over to Q. For my other triangle, I can go, well, let's just do, I'll draw it over it. For P, I can go down to S, and then from S over to R. So I'm going to start this one by marking some distances. First, let's do the yellow triangle. The yellow triangle goes from P to Q, which is from 2 to 6. That means that this side has a length of 4. This side goes from 3 to 7, so it also has a length of 4. What we do not know is the hypotenuse, which we will call C. So we have 4, 4, and C. So our Pythagorean relationship will say 4 squared plus 4 squared equals C squared. Now, I'll let you guys figure it out from there, but that's how we're going to think about this. So now let's look at the blue triangle. The blue triangle, the bottom segment of it goes from 2 to 8 for a distance of 6. So that one, let's mark it. The blue one will be 4 squared plus 6 squared equals C squared. And again, I'll let you figure out the rest of it from there. The next one, I also have to find 2 diagonals. So I will trace them on, going from B to K. And then we have another one from M to G. So we will need to construct a triangle, a right triangle, for the green diagonal, but then we'll also have to construct one for the purple triangle. So that one will look like that. And you can count the blocks on this one to figure out the lengths of those sides. And I'll leave the rest of that for you to do. All right, so hopefully this video helps. If it does, give it the big thumbs up, subscribe. I'm just kidding. I don't really care. I don't need subscribers. I hope things are going well for you. If you have any questions, send me a message on Remind. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy.